I never thought I'd be telling this story. It's kind of embarrassing, actually, because it happened at a nudist beach. And no, this isn't going to be that kind of story. I've been part of the naturist community for 3 years now, and it's nothing like what most people think. We're just regular people who happen to enjoy a more free lifestyle. Our beach colony is pretty small, maybe 100 people, mostly folks in their 30s and 40s. We do normal beach stuff: volleyball, swimming, cookouts. The only difference is we do it without clothes. After a while, you don't even think about it anymore. We're like a big family, really. Everyone knows everyone else, and we look out for each other. That morning started like any other. I was taking my usual sunrise walk along the shore, just enjoying the quiet. The sand was still cool between my toes, and the waves were gentle after last night's low tide. The sky was this weird mix of purple and orange, like a bruise healing. I'd been doing these morning walks for months. It was my way of dealing with insomnia. Usually the beach was empty at this hour, just me and the seagulls. That's when I saw something strange in the distance. The sun was just coming up behind it, making it hard to see clearly. At first I thought maybe someone had gone for an early morning swim and gotten into trouble. We'd had warnings about swimming alone, especially after low tide. The currents can get nasty out here, and even experienced swimmers can get pulled under. But as I got closer, I realized this wasn't a person at all. My first thought was, maybe it was a beached whale or a dolphin. We get those sometimes, and we have procedures for handling it. Call the Marine Wildlife Rescue, keep it wet, that sort of thing. But this was different. I'm still not sure how to describe what I saw. It was big, maybe 6 feet long, and looked kind of like a mix between different animals. Its skin was dark and had this weird seaweed-like stuff all over it. The smell was what hit me first. Not like normal dead sea life, but something else. Something chemical, almost metallic. I kept my distance, just in case it was still alive. Something about it just felt wrong, you know? Like when you see a spider that's just a little too big, and your brain tells you to stay away. A few minutes later, Jane and Dawn, 2 other early morning walkers, came by. They were just as confused as I was. Jane's a marine biologist, or was before she retired, and even she couldn't figure out what we were looking at. "What is that thing?" Jane asked, keeping her distance. She had her phone out, taking pictures. "Smells awful," Dawn said, wrinkling her nose. Dawn was newer to the community, only been with us about 6 months. She was always up early, trying to catch the sunrise. I found a piece of driftwood and poked it a couple times. It didn't move. "Must have washed up during the tide," I said. "We should probably tell security." The whole time, I couldn't shake this feeling that we were being watched. Not by other people. There wasn't anyone else around. But by something else. Dawn offered to stay and watch it while Jane and I went to find Officer Mike. The main resort area was empty that morning because everyone was at the monthly breakfast barbecue on the South Beach. These barbecues were usually a big deal. Everyone would bring food, we'd have games, music. Today's was special because it was Sarah's birthday. She made these amazing blueberry pancakes everyone loved. The walk to find Mike took longer than it should have. The sand felt different under my feet, somehow heavier. Jane kept looking back over her shoulder. Neither of us said anything, but I could tell she felt it too. Something wasn't right. When we got back with Officer Mike about 10 minutes later, something felt wrong. Dawn was gone. So was the thing we'd found. The weird part? There weren't any drag marks or footprints in the sand. It was like they'd both just vanished. The only trace was that metallic smell, stronger now. Mike thought we were messing with him and left to handle something on the other side of the beach. He was always grumpy in the mornings, but today he seemed especially irritated. That's when things got really weird. Jane walked over to where the creature had been and suddenly sank into the sand up to her knees. She screamed, and I rushed to help her, but something was pulling her down. I reached for her hand, but she slipped under so fast. I still feel awful about freezing up in that moment. Her last words were, "It's alive." Then she was just gone. The sand settled like nothing had happened. I ran toward the barbecue area to warn the others. I'm not a runner, and sprinting on sand is harder than it looks. By the time I got there, I was out of breath and couldn't get the words out fast enough. Sarah was serving her pancakes. Kids were playing frisbee. Everything looked so normal. Then the ground started shaking. People dropped their plates and backed away as the sand in the middle of the barbecue area began to bulge upward. What happened next is still hard to talk about. The thing burst out of the sand, spraying this weird, dark liquid everywhere. People started screaming and running. The liquid had the same metallic smell from before, but stronger, making it hard to breathe. I ran for the water. Behind me, I could hear more screams and this horrible sound, like something moving through the sand. It wasn't like normal digging sounds. It was smoother, faster, like something swimming through the sand as easily as water. I kept swimming until I reached a Coast Guard boat that was passing by. Only 4 of us made it off the beach that day. Me, 2 kids who had been swimming when it happened, and Sarah, still holding her spatula when they pulled her from the water. The police took our statements, but I could tell they didn't believe us. They probably thought we were just some crazy nudists making up stories, but I know what I saw. The weird thing is, they never found any bodies. The police searched the beach for days. They found some strange marks in the sand, but that was it. Everyone else just disappeared. They found phones, towels, chairs, even Dawn's camera with pictures of the creature on it. But the pictures were all blurry, like something had interfered with the camera. I've tried to make sense of it since then. Maybe it was some kind of undiscovered sea creature. Maybe it was something else. All I know is I can't go back to that beach. I can't even walk on regular beaches anymore without checking the sand around me. That metallic smell haunts my dreams. Sometimes at night, I still hear that sound, like something moving underneath the ground. And I wonder if that thing is still out there, waiting in the sand. Because the scariest part isn't what happened that day. It's knowing that whatever it was, it's probably still hunting. I check the news sometimes, looking for stories about strange disappearances at beaches. So far, nothing. But I keep thinking about Jane, about Dawn, about all the others. Where did they go? Are they still alive somewhere? And every time I see someone walking barefoot on the sand, I want to warn them. Because now I know. Sometimes the ground beneath your feet isn't as solid as you think. And sometimes the thing you should be afraid of isn't in the water. It's in the sand beneath your toes. I took the night guard job at Newport Beach because it seemed easy. 4 nights a week, just walking the pier and making sure no one was fishing after hours or doing anything stupid. The pay wasn't great, but I could study for my marine biology degree between rounds. The old guard I was replacing kept telling me to never stop walking. "Keep moving," he said. "Don't stare at the water too long, especially during the new moon." I thought he was just being dramatic. You know how older guys like to mess with the new person. The first few weeks were exactly what I expected. Chasing away drunk teenagers, helping lost tourists find their hotels, that kind of thing. But then came that first new moon night. The ocean was completely still. No waves, no wind. Just flat black water stretching out to the horizon. The pier lights reflected on the surface like they were floating in space. It was beautiful, in a creepy sort of way. During my 3rd round that night, I noticed something weird. The reflections weren't matching up with the actual lights anymore. There were more of them, moving in patterns that didn't make sense, like someone was holding lights under the water. I tried not to look directly at them. The old guard's warning kept playing in my head, but it was like trying not to look at a car crash. My eyes kept being drawn back to those lights. That's when I noticed they were getting closer to the pier. And they weren't lights at all. They were faces. Pale, glowing faces just under the surface of the water. Not swimming. They were perfectly still, just watching. I started walking faster, keeping my eyes on the wooden planks of the pier, but I could feel them following me. Every time I glanced at the water, There were more of them. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all with the same blank expression, like masks floating just below the surface. Near the end of my shift, I heard humming. Not from the water, from behind me on the pier. I turned around and saw a woman in a long white dress standing at the railing. Her hair was soaking wet, dripping onto the wood. I started to tell her the pier was closed, but she turned around before I could speak. Her face, it was like those faces in the water, pale, expressionless. But her eyes were completely black, like empty sockets. She asked me if I'd seen her children. Her voice sounded wrong, like it was coming from underwater. She said they were swimming, but they'd been down there so long. Could I help her look for them? I ran, straight to the security office, locked the door, called my supervisor. They sent someone to check, but by then the woman was gone. The water was normal again, just gentle waves in the moonlight. My supervisor said I'd probably dozed off, had a weird dream. Happens to all the night guards sometimes, but I know what I saw. I kept working there. I needed the money for school. But I learned to do what the old guard said. Keep walking. Don't stop. Don't look at the water during the new moon. But sometimes, when I'm doing my rounds, I hear that humming. And sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I see a woman in white standing at different spots along the pier. She's always looking down at the water like she's searching for something. I've got 6 months left on this job before I graduate. I'm counting down the days. But I worry about whoever takes my place after I leave. I'll tell them what the old guard told me. Keep walking, don't stop, don't look at the water during the new moon. I collect beach glass. It's a weird hobby, I know, but there's something peaceful about walking along the shore early in the morning, looking for bits of glass smoothed by the ocean. My collection's pretty impressive. Blues from old medicine bottles, greens from wine bottles, and if I'm really lucky, the rare reds from old ship lanterns. That's how I found the first stone. It was different from my usual finds. Not glass, but some kind of dark stone. Perfectly round, like a marble but bigger, about the size of a golf ball. It had these weird markings carved into it, lines that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. I thought it was just some kid's lost toy. I almost threw it back, but something about it felt important. So I took it home, added it to my display shelf. That night, I had the weirdest dreams, all ocean sounds and whispers in languages I didn't understand. The next morning, I found another one. Same size, same type of stone, but with different markings. Then another the next day. Always in the same spot, always at sunrise, like they were being left there for me to find. My shelf was getting crowded with these stones when the dreams started getting more intense. I'd see figures standing in the water at dawn, holding something in their hands. They never came closer, just stood there, watching. In the dreams, I knew they were waiting for something, but I didn't know what. I started researching the stones online. Found some stories about old fishing communities and their customs about returning things to the sea. How taking certain things from the beach was bad luck. But these were just stories, right? The dreams changed. Now I was underwater, but I could breathe fine. There were structures down there. Old buildings covered in the same kind of markings as the stones. In the dreams, I knew what they meant, but I could never remember when I woke up. Then the stones started moving. I'd wake up to find them arranged in patterns on my shelf. At first, I told myself I must have bumped them while dusting. But the patterns got more complex. 3 stones forming a triangle with 1 in the center, then 5 stones making a star shape with curved lines between them. The most unsettling was when they formed a perfect spiral, with the largest stone in the middle, smaller ones circling outward like a nautilus shell. The patterns seemed to pulse with a faint light when the moon hit them just right. One morning, I woke up to find all the stones gone. Just gone. The shelf was empty except for my beach glass collection. But when I went to my usual spot on the beach that morning, they were all there, arranged in a pattern I'd never seen before. Smaller circles inside bigger ones, like ripples frozen in a pond, with wavy lines flowing between them like water currents. Smaller stones created little star shapes at 8 points around the edge. The whole thing must have been at least 6 feet across. That's when I saw them, the figures from my dreams, standing in the water. They weren't scary exactly. They looked almost like they were made of water themselves, transparent but somehow solid. One of them was holding out their hand, like they were offering something. I knew what they wanted. The stones needed to go back. They were never mine to keep. They were markers or messages or something else I couldn't understand, but they belonged to the ocean. I spent hours placing each stone back in the water, trying to copy the patterns from my dreams. With each stone I returned, I had to set it in just the right spot, making flowing lines that looked like waves, then overlapping circles that reminded me of ripples in water. Some stones needed to point certain ways, their markings lining up with the rising sun. The figures moved closer with each correct placement. If I got it wrong, the water would grow still, unnaturally calm, until I fixed it. It felt like completing a conversation I didn't know I was having. When I placed the last stone, the figures were right at the water's edge. One of them, the one who had been holding out their hand, left something in the sand. Then they just dissolved, like waves washing away footprints. What they left wasn't another stone. It was a piece of beach glass, but not like any I'd ever seen. It was perfectly round, like the stones had been, and it seemed to glow from within, shifting colors like the northern lights. I still have that piece of glass. It's the only thing I kept from that whole strange time. Sometimes when I hold it up to the light, I see reflections of those underwater buildings, those strange markings. And sometimes, just sometimes, I understand what they mean. I still collect beach glass, but I'm more careful now about what I take home. Some things wash up on the shore because they're lost. But others are exactly where they're supposed to be. And sometimes, the ocean sends us messages in bottles, stones, and sea glass. Little mysteries that aren't meant to be solved, just returned. The beach feels different now. When I walk along the shore at sunrise, I sometimes see those patterns in the sand, flowing lines that spiral into tight coils, circles inside squares, inside triangles, shapes that seem to move with the tide. They're always gone by the next wave, but I know their messages too. I just don't need to understand them anymore. I've learned that the ocean keeps its own secrets, and sometimes the best thing you can do is give them back.